Live from the energy capital of the nation, Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Good morning and welcome to the program. Got a busy day lined up for you today. We're actually going to talk about the airline subsidies, but I want to hold off on that until a little bit later on in the show. 6 o'clock's a little bit too early to start with that stuff because the hot local issues, I like to do those a little bit later in the show so that more people can hear them. You know, it's something I think a lot of people would probably want to weigh in on. And I actually have a longer clip from Dan Coolidge about the SkyWest subsidies. So we'll do that later in the show. I actually want to start off with something that I kind of wanted to get to yesterday, but I never got a chance. And I think it's not a major national story, but I think it's a symptom of something that is a lot worse than the actual story itself. And of course, we're talking about this video that's going around right now of several teenagers beating up another teenager on the school bus, and the bus driver can't do anything to stop him. He's telling him to stop. He calls 911, but he wasn't allowed to stop them from beating this kid, and he ended up the victim ended up with a broken arm and cuts and bruises and stuff like that. But I mean, it was, if you haven't seen the video, it's just frightening. I mean, they're just three kids just windmill punching and kicking and all kinds of stuff. And this kid's, they got him cornered in his seat on the bus. And it's just terrible. I mean, it's just terrible. And the attack took place on July 9th in Pinellas County, Florida, which is outside of Tampa, like the St. Pete area. The cell phone video and the surveillance video from the bus only came out recently. As the boys pummeled the bus driver, a guy named John Moody yells at the assailants to leave the boys alone, or to leave the boy alone. And he called his dispatch and had them send help. Here's his quote, and this is what he says in the video. "You got to send somebody here quick. They're about to beat this boy to death over here. Please get somebody here quick. They're still doing it, and there's nothing I can do." Now, I mean, this guy's, not an older guy. He's not elderly, but he's, late middle age, I'd say. Well, okay, he's 64. Okay. He was on Piers Morgan last night, and he said that he was calling for help on the radio as school policy required. Me jumping into the middle of that fight with three boys that would have been more dangerous for other students on the bus as for myself, and just no telling what could have happened. And he said it was in shock and he was petrified, and that watching this video is like a bad dream. This guy actually retired 2 weeks after the attack after 18 years of driving a bus. And this is just, I mean, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of, and actually I have a clip from the 5, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But I mean, it's a symptom of our culture where there's no consequence for any of this stuff anymore. And the police say that the youths attacked the 13-year-old after he told officials at their dropout prevention school that one of them had tried to sell him drugs. The ferocity of the attack left the victim with 2 black eyes and a broken arm. The Gulfport police chief, Robert Vincent, told the local TV station that the driver should have stepped in. There was clearly an opportunity for him to intervene or check on the welfare of the children, or the child in this case, and he didn't make any effort to do so. But prosecutors say they have no grounds on which to bring charges. And I'm not sure this guy should be, I don't even know if he should really be punished at all for not intervening. I mean, these are 3 thugs beating up a 13-year-old kid. It's just unbelievable. According to Pinellas County school policy, the bus driver isn't required to intervene, only to call dispatch, and he can step in if he feels it's safe. I don't know if it would have been safe. I mean, who knows? I mean, at this point, these kids could have had guns. Other counties in the state actually forbid drivers from physically stopping the fight. And Moody's lawyer said the complaints about Moody are unfair. And I kind of tend to agree with that. I mean, maybe he should have stepped in. I mean, it wouldn't take much for a grown man to take out 15-year-old kids. I mean, let's be honest. And they probably would have scattered as soon as he got up out of his seat. But, I mean, I also understand that, you know, if he's petrified. I mean, some people just aren't brave like that. And the lawyer also says a lot of attention should be focused on school administrators, whom he suggested could have done more to prevent the beating. School officials let those two boys back on the bus, or let them on the bus, and Mr. Moody had no idea what had happened at the school. So remember, the kid that got there was two assailants, not three. But the kid that got beat up was 13 years old. His assailants were both 15. And I guess they were all in some kind of special ed school where they're trying to keep these at-risk kids from dropping out. And, you know, the kid that got beat up was white. The two kids that beat him up were African-American. So that's why you're not really hearing a lot about this on the mainstream media. It doesn't fit the narrative, unfortunately. And it's a shame because this kid could have been killed. And instead, we're focusing on what the driver should have done instead of focusing on why these kids think that they can get away with doing this. And they probably will get away with it. I mean, they'll be arrested and they'll probably go to juvenile hall for a couple of years where they'll learn to be real criminals, and they'll get out when they're 18 and they'll start murdering and raping and selling drugs and all that kind of stuff. It's terrible. When we come back, we're actually going to talk about this incident is actually part of a bigger picture. So we'll talk about that when we come back. News Talk 1270 KIML.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Facebook. Just search for Don Carpenter Radio. News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about this case in Florida where two 15-year-old boys basically beat the tar out of a 13-year-old boy on the school bus. The driver called for help, but he didn't physically intervene. He says he was afraid to intervene, and I'll be honest, I don't fault him for that. I mean, I would have jumped up and went right at him, but you know, that's just me as a father myself, and I'm sure this guy has kids. But as a father, I couldn't even imagine seeing somebody doing that to another kid, especially a smaller, weaker kid like that. But you know, everybody's different. I mean, what would you do? I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing some opinions on what you would do. I mean, you know, I'm sure probably most of the at least the men listening would jump right in. I think, especially if you're a parent, you know, you kind of have a soft spot for these weaker kids. And you know, I mean, hey, but maybe disagree. 682-1270, 682-1270. Like I mentioned before the break, I wanted to talk about this kind of being part of a bigger issue, though. And that issue is that we've become a culture that's forgotten consequences to actions like this. And until we kind of get back to where we were at one point, stuff like this is going to continue to happen, and it's going to continue to happen more frequently. Especially, you imagine, I mean, these kids that beat up this, this 13-year-old are basically internet stars now. So even if they get sent to juvenile hall, they're going to be stars when they get there. So we're basically encouraging this kind of stuff as a society, and that's not right.
As our leaders focus on outside threats, our insides rot. Thanks to the triumph of feelings over values, we've witnessed decades of crumbling families accompanied by explosive juvenile delinquency. Free love begets free pain. Hence the bus video, while shot.
And when something happens, and say, a young thug jumps a guy and gets shot in the process, because he's trying to kill this guy. The young thug is held up as an innocent victim, and the guy defending himself is considered a murderer. So that's what happens in this twisted society that we've built.
Talking is but a symptom of a culture that forgot consequences, choosing immediate gratification over.
And I thought I was right. The news article is actually wrong because they're showing the video alongside this. There's 3 kids beating on this kid. One of them's kind of off camera, but you can see him. There's 3 kids beating on this 13-year-old, 3 15-year-olds.
Long-term familial commitment. White folks can get away with that. They had the advantage. Minorities making the same choices, no such luck. The new job figures for black teens is tragic. 4 in 10 don't work. How did that happen? And where does it lead? Apparently, stomping a kid on a bus while holding onto your stupid, saggy pants. Decades ago, work wasn't about status, but about pride. Without work, life had no meaning. The fundamental cause of our dying society is our steady elimination of the financial and spiritual necessity for work of any kind. You can.
And just think about that now. We encourage people to not work. And this is what happens. And that's why I'm saying that this is a bigger thing than just a couple teenagers beating up another teenager. This is a symbol of exactly, it's like a microcosm of everything that's going wrong with this society right now.
Blame corrosive government programs, I do, but it's also our corrosive belief that some work is just not that cool. We mock the bottom rung because it's beneath us. So teens shun work, sell drugs, and appropriate a lifestyle glamorized as superior to the McDonald's counter. Many are black, like our president. You'd think he'd say, that could have been me? He says little, period, preferring to praise outed athletes and wronged professors. But there are people out.
And think about that. And I actually have another clip that I'm going to play after this, where the president is in this story. Because, I mean, this kid that got beat up could have been him. I mean, he was a nerdy little kid and, probably scrawny and smart and, he probably studied a lot. It could have been him. But no, this kid doesn't look like him. So it doesn't matter.
There who could use his help more in buses and classrooms in grim neighborhoods. Who knows, maybe admonishing them in a clear and angry voice might be every bit as relaxing as golf. And it just might work.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that now. Think about that. It really is. All it would take is just one speech. Just one speech, and it would be, at least it would be a start. But we're not going to get that speech. We'll never see that. At least not from the folks we have in charge right now. Good morning, Chad.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good. Have you seen this video of these kids in Florida beating up another kid on the school bus?
No, I heard you talking about it, though.
Yeah. Do you have kids at all?
No.
Okay, so, I mean, it's probably a little bit different. I mean, I'm sure everybody kind of sympathizes with, a young kid that gets beat up by 3 larger kids. But, yeah. I mean, I think all of us got bullied at some point when we were kids.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what if you were the driver of that bus, would you have jumped in and tried to help?
Yeah, probably. I probably would have stopped the bus and kicked the other guys off, or else suspended and banned them from taking the bus ever again.
Yeah, or at least you could have, jumped in the middle and kind of, because, as soon as an adult gets up, these kids probably would have scattered. And instead of just sitting there in the seat and going, hey, stop that, I called the cops. And they didn't stop.
So what happened? They just beat this kid? Yeah,
they beat him. They beat him half to death. I mean, he has a broken arm and black eyes and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, for a kid to get beaten so bad that he has a broken arm, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's not good.
And if you see the video, what they do is they surround him. He's in his seat by himself, on the school bus, and they're stomping on him. Everybody listening can't really see, but I'm demonstrating how they're stomping down on him and punching down on him. And 3 larger kids.
Ugh.
And probably they're just going to get sent to juvie hall until they're 18, and they'll come out and they'll be even more dangerous criminals.
Yeah, good times.
And all of this because he ratted him out for trying to sell him drugs.
Oh, that was why they beat him up?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I mean, but that's the kind of world we live in now. I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad my kid goes to a good school. And
yeah, I never really had to deal with that kind of stuff when I was in middle school or junior high.
Yeah. I mean, and plus my kid's not quite old enough to carry a firearm yet, but she knows how to use them. We'll just put it that way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. She knows how to fire rifles and handguns. So as soon as she turns 21, I'm buying her a pistol.
There you go.
To prevent something like this from happening.
All right.
So what do we have going on in sports?
We'll hear from the Wyoming football coach, Dave Christensen. Yesterday was the first day of fall practice, and we'll have all the baseball results. Okay. It's kind of a slow sports day, or? Not too slow, but that'll take care of the sports report for this hour.
Yeah, well, hey, at least no A-Rod today, right?
No, although he did get hit by a pitch, and Joe Girardi, the manager, was not happy about that. We'll hear from him.
He's just having a bad week, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is.
Did he get hit in the back or in the head? Or
I think the main thing that made Joe Girardi mad was that the crowd went crazy.
Hey, at least he got on base.
They were thrilled he got hit by a pitch.
Well,
you want to be the most popular pitcher in Major League Baseball, hit A-Rod.
Hey, there you go. And hey, it probably got him on base, and he probably would have struck out anyway.
Probably so.
There you go. News Talk 1270 KIML.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And let's get right back into this. If you're just joining us, we're talking about this case right outside of Tampa, Florida. It's in Pinellas County, which is St. Pete area, a little bit north of Tampa. These three 15-year-olds, I don't know why the news article I read said two, it was actually three, and you can see them in the video. Three 15-year-olds beat the stuffing out of a 13-year-old for ratting them out that they were trying to sell him drugs. And the bus driver, he didn't jump in because he says he was afraid, and you have to take him at his word. I don't really fault the bus driver that much. I fault all of society for allowing this kind of stuff to go on. And that's kind of where we left off.
The Gulfport police charged the three juveniles with aggravated assault, one with unarmed robbery. I thought it looked like attempted murder. Hate crime is not being pursued. There was three black teens against a white kid. They're saying it's more about a retribution over the kid reporting them for drugs.
I want you to think about that now. And for the record, I do not support any hate crime legislation because number one, you don't commit crimes against people you like. So it's a hate crime. Any crime is a hate crime. But even if you want to call it a bias crime, I say you punish all criminals equally, based on the facts of the case, and punish them. If you want to increase the penalties for assault and murder and that kind of stuff, I have no problem with that. But don't pretend like some murders are worse than others. Murder is murder. Or aggravated assault is aggravated assault.
Think, Mr. Webb?
First, I don't like hate crime legislation. If you're getting beaten with fists and kicked, you're getting beaten and kicked. But you can't really tell, but this is David Webb talking. He's a radio host. He works for Sirius, and he's a black guy, and he's saying that he doesn't like hate crime legislation. But here's my feeling about this case here. If they have hate crime legislation, why isn't it being used? You gotta be, these kids wouldn't have done this to another black kid. Let's be honest. I mean, they definitely wouldn't have ganged up like that. Yep. That said, it's the hypocrisy in this for me, Greg.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have this and how the media handles it? If this was three white kids and a black kid, and we've seen that play out before, Sharpton would be down there, Jackson would be down there, Florida would be an apartheid state again.
Oh, yeah. If this were switched around,
Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton would be down there just like they were for the George Zimmerman case, demanding that hate crime charges and attempted murder and all this stuff would be pursued. And, since they have the hate crime laws, it should be pursued in this case. I mean, it absolutely should. I don't agree with hate crime laws, but if you have it, you have to apply it equally. That's just the way it is. As far as the aggravated assault, I think aggravated assault is serious enough for this case. I mean, it's not a simple assault, and I don't think it was attempted murder. I don't think they were actually trying to kill the kid. They were just trying to beat him up pretty bad. And that's so. I think aggravated assault is the appropriate charge here. At least, not being a legal expert, I think that's fine. But hate crime should have been pursued.
And frankly, these kids should be charged as adults. If it's possible, they should be charged as adults. They could have taken out an eye.
Yeah.
Now, that would be an interesting thing. I wouldn't mind seeing these kids charged as adults. They certainly were fighting like adults. I mean, when I was a kid, when kids got in fights, they would be, you'd maybe punch each other one time and wrestle around on the ground, and people would pull you apart, and you'd shake hands and you'd go home. And these kids were fighting like professional gang member fighters.
They've definitely scarred this kid. And stop coming down on the 64-year-old bus driver. Look at these kids at 15, 2 years younger than Trayvon.
Those kids
They're
get hit.
throwing punches. A 64-year-old is going to get beaten just as badly.
Those were haymakers, man. They were those. I mean, yeah, that hurts. Andrew, I'm looking.
These are kids that know what they're doing in a fight. I guarantee it. I've seen, I watch UFC and fighting and stuff like that. These kids know what they're doing. They're throwing punches like adults. Charge them as adults. I have no problem with that.
That's attempted murder. They didn't stop.
Yep. And I mean, look, I don't know if it was racially motivated or not. 3 black kids on 1 white kid. It certainly appears that way. I agree with David. I don't want to stand up and say, okay, black on white now. I want the White House to weigh in on this, because they shouldn't be weighing on this to begin with. But where are the...
But we're actually going to talk about that after the top of the hour break, though. Why aren't they weighing in on this? If they're going to stick their nose in every little case, why aren't they weighing in on this one? So just think about that. We're going to take a short break. We'll come back and we'll finish up this clip. And after the top of the hour, we'll get into the next one. Stay tuned. News Talk 1270 KIML.
He likes turtles too. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program, and we're going to wrap this last bit of audio up. We're talking about this case in Florida where 3 15-year-olds severely beat a 13-year-old for ratting him out for trying to sell him drugs. They beat him on the school bus. School bus driver didn't do anything. I've been saying the school bus drivers shouldn't really be gone after here. It's a bigger problem than just this school bus driver not helping the kid. And he did what he could. I mean, the guy's 64 years old. Cut that guy a break. Go after the people that are really the problem here, and that's these 3 thugs. Let's be honest, that's what they are. They're 3 thugs. And let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML, you're on the air.
Yeah, Don, the only reason none of this gets any airtime is because the Professional Victim Society, like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and the rest of those who want to be professional victims and cry about the white man, can't say that they're victims here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if this were flipped around, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton would have been there weeks ago trying to stir stuff up.
And then, of course, our president, who wants to unify everybody and make sure everybody's the same, is going to go and divide us by class and race, and he just made it worse.
Yeah, well, and we're going to talk about that in the next hour. Yeah.
How about this? If that kid could have been my kid, did that work?
Yeah, well, but he wouldn't say that. He would say the kids that were doing the beating could have been him. Because they
would have been Trayvon's friends.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's It wouldn't be surprising if they were. It's not too far away from Sanford. It's not really that far away. But
the only reason they let George Zimmerman off, I won't even say let off, the only reason they could not convict him, he was walking back to his truck when he was attacked.
Yeah. It's
by Trayvon.
And it's the same mentality. I mean, these kids are basically the same mentality.
Ignorant fools.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. You're exactly right.
Well, thanks, Don.
Yep, thanks a lot for the call. And, yeah, I mean, these kids in 2 years would be Trayvon Martin. Let's be honest. That's what would have happened.
Civil rights leaders on both sides of the aisle when a child gets beaten. Where are the people that advocate against bullying, Greg? Where's the Hollywood community that just hates bullying against?
Well, it's not bullying if a protected class of people are doing the bullying.
Gays or any kind of teen. Forget color. Everyone is always put into these little boxes. Black, white, gay, straight. Just a child's getting beat. Will someone say something? But because it's 3 black kids on a white, they don't say a word.
What do you think, Bob?
I can only speak for this liberal, and that is that I find it appalling that my side has decided to remain silent on this, whether it's Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, even the President of the United States.
Okay, we're actually, we only have about a minute, but let's go back to the phones. News Talk 1270, KIML, you're on the air.
Good morning, Don.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, when I was a kid, we got into fights and, we made some mistakes and stuff, and we got our butts kicked. And a lot of these young people that are acting absolutely out of their minds have had no supervision in their lives. And I think that we need to get back to before they're 15 years old, willing to gang beat another human being, to instill a sense of dignity and pride into them, and give them some whoopings when they need them.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I mean, we're not holding these kids responsible for anything.
But personally, I do disagree with the whole trying a child as an adult. We need a line somewhere that says this is a child and this is an adult. Because like they calling Trayvon Martin a child and all this. Well, if he would have went out and murdered some people, they would have tried him as an adult, So they just use whatever lingo is convenient for them to stir up a bunch of problems. And if these 3 kids or 2 kids or whatever it was that beat the other child up, and it doesn't matter what color any of them were, it don't matter. If they would have got some whippings when they decided to display this kind of behavior way younger in life, they might have had a good sense not to do that.
Yeah, I think maybe, I'm 40, so I might have been the last generation that was actually in school, then they were allowed to paddle us, and maybe that's what we need to do. We need to bring that back to the schools because the parents aren't doing it. And with that, we're actually up against the top of the hour break. We're going to continue this in the next hour. This is a good conversation, and I want to thank the callers bringing up excellent points. And I agree, you have to draw the line somewhere with this trying kids as an adult. Maybe 15's that line. Stay tuned. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. We'll be back in just a few and keep going with this. It's a good conversation.
No crazy conspiracies. Just good local talk. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program, and we've been talking, I think we're going to do this at least for the first couple breaks of this hour, if not the whole hour, because I think this is an important thing to talk about, and we didn't really even get through the first clip that I have about this, so, and I think the response that we've gotten is pretty good, too. It's been a good conversation. And I kind of want to go back to the last caller we had at the top of the top of the hour, talking about corporal punishment being being eliminated, and that's why these kids are acting like this. I think that's a big part of what's going on. Obviously, I don't know anything about these kids that did the attack, the 15-year-olds. But I would be willing to bet that at least two of the three had no father in the home. You know, and I'm not one of these guys that goes around talking about, oh, the good old days. Things were better back then. But some things were better. And we didn't have 15-year-olds ganging up. And again, when I was a kid, if you got in a fight, it was one-on-one. And you threw hands for a little bit, and then you wrestled around a little bit, and you got up and you shook hands, and everything was fine afterwards. You didn't try to beat another kid to death with the help of two other kids. And you certainly didn't do this to smaller, weaker kids. And again, you didn't also do it because they caught you trying to sell drugs. So let's go back. I actually backed the audio up a little bit because I want you to hear Beckel again. And if more of our liberals were like Bob Beckel, well, I guess guys like me would be out of a job for one thing. But I think what he has to say is really important, and the fact that his side of the aisle is being completely silent about this is shameful.
What do you think, Bob?
I can only speak for this liberal, and that is that I find it appalling that my side has decided to remain silent on this, whether it's Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, even the President of the United States.
Now, would it kill Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton to say, hey, this is not how you should behave as a young black man? I mean, people, as sad as it is, people look up to Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and the president. People look up to these guys. Would it kill them to say, this is not how you behave? You do not beat up young kids weaker than you. And you don't gang up on kids, and you don't get in fights in the school bus. But nothing. Silence. Because there's no money to be made from it. That's exactly what it is. There's no money for these race hustlers to make from this.
It seems to me that this is an opportunity for us to say that things are that you can't excuse this action because these are three black kids and there's one white kid. It seems to me now's the time to step up and say, this is unacceptable no matter what color they are. Yep. These guys deserve to be tried as adults. In fact, you were up to me, they'd go away for a lifetime and let them think about their haymakers when they're busting rocks.
Well, I don't know about life in prison, but eventually these kids are going to do something that's going to get them life in prison. So, maybe locking them away is the only thing that can do. I mean, the system is so broken. Some of these kids are so broken. They're just broken people. It's beyond hope. And guys like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, and I don't like beating up the president just to beat up the president, but yes, the president in this case could do something to help. All they have to do is say a few words. Just say the words, that these kids shouldn't be doing this. But you won't hear anything about it. I don't know. Maybe if enough guys on the radio and TV and maybe if enough guys actually say something, maybe the right people will hear it, and maybe the powers that be will actually speak on this. But I wouldn't hold my breath.
Dana, they say crime is going down, yet the perception is that it's getting worse. Is that because we're just seeing more of it because people are filming it, we have surveillance? Yeah. But it just seems like there's a coarsening of culture that is happening no matter what, especially teens towards adults.
I think it has happened over time. I do think the ability for a local story like in Pinellas County, Florida, for it to make national news for 3 days in a row now, that has only happened because of technology. That's not a bad thing. Yeah. But what's interesting when Bob said this is an opportunity, unfortunately, there are opportunities every single day. What you said yesterday, we're getting at.
And that's important to remember, that this kind of stuff is happening every day in Chicago and Detroit, places like that. This kind of stuff is a common occurrence. And a lot of times it's black kids beating up black kids, and nobody wants to talk about that. And that's the worst kind of racism of all. I mean, these kids are just being left to fend for themselves, and nobody's helping them because Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson can't make money off helping these kids, so they don't do it. And actually, now that I mention that, I saw this during the break, and this is just a little bit of a side note, but it's kind of related. Apparently, Ebony Magazine has 4 different covers of their upcoming issue discussing the impact of the Trayvon Martin tragedy. And the first issue has Trayvon's family, and it has the big headline at the bottom, "We are all Trayvon." The second one is Spike Lee and his son. The second is Dwayne Wade and his kids. And the fourth one is Boris Kojo. I don't even know who that guy is, but it's him and his son. And they're all wearing hoodies. Think about that. We are all Trayvon. No, you're not. I mean, these are people that are doing productive things with their lives. These people are doing, Spike Lee makes movies. Dwayne Wade plays basketball. This Boris guy, I don't know what he does, but I'm sure he does something productive. They're not like Trayvon. They are not Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was a thug. These kids in Pinellas, Florida, they're thugs.
Somebody, and the president being the perfect person, do something about the root cause of the problem. You mentioned on the work front, yes, I agree that's a problem. I also think that the faith-based community is needed now more than ever because government can't heal anything. A job can do something, but you have to have a purpose.
Well, all the jobs in the world are helpless, are useless. All the jobs in the world are useless if you have kids that don't even want to take those jobs because they can make more money selling drugs, or they can make more money sitting at home and their mom collects, welfare and food stamps and all that kind of stuff. They don't need to work, so they don't work. With that, we're going to take a short break. We'll kind of finish up this clip and get into the next one on the other side of the break. News Talk 1270 KIML.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Twitter @TheDonCarpenter. News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter program. And welcome back. We're going to get right back into this. I want to finish this clip before the bottom of the hour. I'll try not to stop it too much because I know you'd probably rather hear these guys talk than me blabbing. But, it's my show. And we're talking about this case in Florida, in case you're just joining us. The video became viral a couple days ago. This happened in July. It was in Pinellas County, Florida, which is outside of Tampa. 3 15-year-olds severely beat a 13-year-old on the bus because the 13-year-old told on them for trying to sell him drugs. And they were all in a high-risk school for kids that were in danger of dropping out. So, this is already a case of a school where, this kind of stuff probably happens all the time. And, of course, the bus driver called the police and everything, but he didn't jump in and help. And, we already kind of absolved the bus driver of any wrongdoing. I think he did all that he could in his situation. I mean, in my situation, I would have gone right in there, but I'm also, 24 years younger than this guy. So let's go back to this. Where we left off, Dana Perino was talking about the idea that government can't be the solution to this. And I think it's an interesting point. Government can't be the solution beyond the fact that, we can stop subsidizing sloth. I think that's a big part of this. Let's be honest. We're subsidizing these people not to work. And I'm not talking about just people in inner cities. I mean, Pinellas County, Florida is not an inner city area. I mean, it's kind of the suburbs. Let's go back to the phones. You're on the air, News Talk 1270.
Yeah, you heard what you said about the bus driver?
Yes.
Granted, he's a 64-year-old man, but you know what? If he would have jumped in to help, right now he'd be under probably lawsuits. He would have lost his job because he laid hands upon somebody. The stupid, litigious society we live in, you got to print on a big lighter, do not light in your face, just so you don't sue somebody who's stupid enough to light their face on fire.
Yeah, and that's another important thing to remember. If the bus driver jumped in, he probably would have been sued by the parents of one of these 3 thugs, if not all 3 parents.
And, I don't know how much time he has on the job, or is he already retired and this is a second thing he's doing because, our president and his economy, you can just live the life of freedom.
Yeah. Well,
he's probably there, trying to bring in some income so he doesn't lose his house.
Yeah, well, he'd been on the job for 18 years, and he retired from driving the bus 2 weeks after this happened. So
exactly. If you'd have laid hands on him, he'd have lost his retirement, I bet you.
Yeah, he probably would have. That's an excellent point to make. So, it probably would have ruined his life to help this kid out. And
sadly, that's what we turned into in the society.
Yeah, and that's another big part of the picture. Adults aren't allowed to help these kids out in situations like this. They're just not allowed to help out, and that's what happens when you're not allowed to help these kids. Teachers aren't allowed to paddle the kids in school. If a parent spanks their kid, the kid can call Child Protective Services, and the government comes and takes your kid away. The system is so stacked towards providing any kind of strict upbringing anymore that the kids just can't. They don't have a chance anymore.
I was listening to you earlier when you talked about it's just not two kids fist fighting or something like that. But off subject, but when you come here to Campbell County, if you have one kid hit another, the police are called. Both kids get a ticket. What happened to, everybody talks about the bully syndrome. The bully syndrome thing is here because you can't take care of business anymore.
Yeah.
I had a bully, and me and him, we went at it. After we was done and we stopped and licked our wounds, we kind of became friends. Because, he respected that I stood up for myself. He's still kind of an ass, but, he didn't bother me anymore.
Well, yeah, and that's, I think that part of growing up has been taken away from kids.
It has been.
Yeah, everything has to be you're a victim of everything anymore. Used to be if you had a bully. I remember when I was a kid, I was a little scrawny kid, and the town bully came around, and I got a bunch of my friends to come help me run him off, and that's what we did back then. Nowadays the police would be involved, and they'd send me to psychological counseling and all that kind of stuff.
But what happened was you gained confidence. With yourself, you learned how to deal with situations that were stressful. Geez, that's what the government doesn't want either, does it?
Well, and
I better put on my tinfoil hat. I'm thinking things I shouldn't.
Well, that's not even tinfoil hat stuff. Let's be honest. That's exactly what's going on. There are people that make a living off making everybody victims, and that's exactly what's going on now.
All right, talk to you later, Don. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for the call. And I even remember I'd probably get arrested for what I did to this kid that was bullying me when I was a kid. And when Chad gets in here, I'll. What
did you do?
I put dog crap in his hat.
Oh, hey.
So
perfect.
I'd probably get arrested for that these days.
They arrest people for that?
I'm sure they'd think of something. I don't know exactly.
Did you put it on?
Oh yeah, I did. He didn't know. And I got a bunch of
Was it hot and steamy?
I can't remember exactly. This was a long time ago. But I got a bunch of this kid was the town bully, and I got a bunch of my friends, and we stood up to him, and I put dog crap in his hat. So
wow. So I guess we don't need to get the details.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. He ran away after that.
On the texture of the.
It was in the yard, so it was probably a little dried up.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't messy or anything, but
it's a bummer. But still,
it taught him a lesson.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's kind of what we're missing these days.
What kind of antics did you see from him from that point on?
We never saw him again.
You never saw him again?
Yeah. Well, see, we lived out in the suburbs, and he came over from the next town over. He rode his bike over, and he would bully us and then go back.
Why?
Because he was a bully. He was just a jerk. That's all. We're talking like maybe 8 or 9 years old. So he was probably.
Oh, gotcha.
He was probably 10 or 12. He's a little bit bigger than us, and so I got my brother and our two next door neighbors, which were basically the same age, and we stood up to him. He went outside, and we didn't even touch him. We just said, "Hey, you're not going to do this anymore," and I guess. At some point, he threw his hat off, and I managed to sneak the offending stuff into his hat. So I mean, it was just a creative way to deal with things, but nowadays you can't do that.
So apparently he had problems making friends, shockingly, in his town. So he had to come over and not make friends in the other town, but find other ways to entertain himself.
Yeah, basically that's exactly what it was. I mean, he had to ride his bike about a mile to come over and bully kids in our neighborhood. So.
That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, but these days, I mean, the cops would be involved, and there'd be psychological evaluations and all kinds of stuff like that. And I guess things have just changed so much. I mean, you grew up in Colorado, right?
Yeah, Boulder.
So you grew up in kind of the same suburban area,
lifestyle.
like I did. So I mean, it was probably not quite the same as around here. I mean, I'd imagine when we were growing up, Gillette was probably a little rough and tumble place.
Yeah, I would imagine probably a little bit smaller too.
Oh, it was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how old you are, but if you're probably a couple years younger than me. So, yeah, back in the 70s, I mean, I'd imagine it was probably 5,000 people.
Yeah, probably
Gillette. So it would have been a lot different. Apparently, this place was a little bit rough and tumble back in those days. It was a pretty good reputation for being a rough town.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And luckily, we've kind of shaken that at least.
Well, that's good.
As far as I know. I mean, we don't hear about bar fights and that kind of stuff anymore. One of these days, I'm going to actually get one of the old timers to come in and tell stories about what things were like back then. So,
yeah, perfect. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be educational. I'd like to hear it. So what do we have going on in sports?
We'll hear from the Wyoming football coach, Dave Christensen, about yesterday's first practice and baseball results and stuff.
Football season's already here. You know, I actually drafted my fantasy league last night.
Who was your top pick?
Let's see. Who did I pick first? I picked. It was a 10-team league, and
what number pick did you have?
I had 5.
And you picked AP?
Oh no, AP went
first.
Long
guy. That's what I figured.
Yeah, I got Ray Rice though.
Oh, that's a good pick.
So yeah, my apparently Michael Turner. I don't know what the deal is with him, but he's out.
He's out of the league.
Oh, he's out of the league?
Yeah, Michael the Burner Turner.
Oh,
he got cut by the Falcons, and he hasn't been. To my knowledge, he hasn't been picked up yet, unless somebody drafted him.
Okay, well he's no longer in my starting lineup.
What team did you have him on?
The Falcons. It said the Falcons.
Yeah, but, they cut him.
But apparently Yahoo leagues, they rank everybody by last year's stats.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I got Drew Brees, Victor Cruz, Torrey Smith, James Jones, Ray Rice, Michael Turner, Ed Dixon, Reggie Bush, Mike Williams, Sidney Rice. I didn't even draft a defense or a kicker.
I'd consider replacing the Burner since he's not even on a team.
Yeah. Well, I'll replace him with a kicker because I stocked up on wide receivers and running backs.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And Alex Smith is my backup quarterback.
Who's your starter?
Drew Brees.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So I'll be fine with Drew. I'll be fine on quarterbacks. I think I'll be fine on running backs too. It's just a question. I'm always weak on wide receivers.
Well, those are about the least important parts of the team besides defense and kicker.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've lost leagues because my wide receivers are always so weak.
Oh, have you?
I mean, I wanted to get Megatron, but he went like number 4.
Oh, really?
So he went before me. I was going to take him first since Adrian Peterson was
gone. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's pretty easy to pick up a running back that can pick you up 12 points a game. Not so much for wide receivers. I don't know. We have a call. We'll try taking one. You're not in a hurry, are you?
No, not really.
Okay. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Rapid City, it was sunny with a temperature of 63. At Custer, it was partly sunny with a temperature of 51 degrees. Again.
Thanks for the weather update.
Got a weather report.
Yeah, hey.
That's fun.
Always helpful. News Talk 1270 KIML.
From Washington to Cheyenne to right here in Gillette, Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. You're listening to Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And let's get right back into this. We've been talking about this case in Tampa, or the Tampa area, where 3 15-year-olds beat the stuffing out of a 13-year-old. And basically because he ratted him out for trying to sell them drugs. And we've been talking for the last hour and a half about the bigger picture of this. And I wanted to kind of, actually, we'll go back to the phones here first, though. Let me take a look here at something. Okay, hang on a second. News Talk.
With the Gillette Airport, it was partly cloudy. The temperature was 58 with a dew point of 54.
Thanks for that update. So let's we won't be able to get all this in, but I want to talk about the idea that the people that could help here, the people that absolutely could help, aren't doing anything. But let's try this. Let's try this. Okay. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Yes, this is Rich.
Hey, how's it
going? That kid is getting punished. Nobody's standing up for him for doing what's right. He gets beat up, and they won't do nothing to these others.
That's absolutely right. I mean, he went to the school. I guess went to his principal or teacher or somebody and told him that these kids were trying to sell him drugs, and nothing but bad things have happened to him after this.
Yeah, they found out who squealed on him, and then they go beat him up, but nothing's going to happen to them.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, the kids that beat him up got arrested, and that doesn't help him out. I mean, and the people that could say, hey, this is reprehensible behavior, the people that could say that aren't saying it. That's the big problem. And
right.
It's just going to send the wrong message to all these kids that are, maybe on the borderline, that it doesn't help to do the right thing.
Well, for too long they say, well, it's not right to rat someone out. So if you stand up for something that you're supposed to stand up, you get beat up or made fun of or get punishment even in the schools. They don't do nothing to stop it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's a whole culture around that it just, you're basically intimidated into not telling when something bad happens.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good day.
Yep, you too. Thanks a lot for the call. It was an excellent point. I mean, the victim in this, nothing good is going to happen to this kid out of this. I mean, he got beat up. I mean, the kids that beat him up got arrested, but that's not going to help him. And again, the people that could do something about it aren't doing anything about it. They're just, they're just being, they're quiet. There's no money to be made in, calling these kids out. So what happens? Nothing. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Bill Cosby made this great big speech that one time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All he was vilified. So you don't hear about Bill Cosby anymore. Bill Cosby would have stood up for this kid. Bill Cosby would have stood against those other three.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's not the color of the person that's bad; it's the person that's bad.
Yeah.
And Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are the worst kind of people. They keep their own people in slavery and bondage.
Yeah, it is. It's the worst kind. And like I've been saying, it's the worst kind of racism of all. I mean, it's worse than anything the Klan or skinheads do anymore. I mean, it's basically they're making a profit off keeping their own people down. It's terrible.
At least the Klan had a straightforward, ideology, and you can see how stupid they were with it. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and people like that, and Louis Farrakhan, it just shows how evil they are.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for the call. And actually, I'm going to try doing something I haven't done in a while. Now that we got the phones fixed, I'm going to try doing this. We're going to give away a prime rib restaurant and wine cellar appetizer. First call at 682-1270, 682-1270. This is good for Gillette's made-to-order fresh guacamole prepared tableside to your specifications and served with warm tortilla chips. Serves 2 people. It's a must-have to complement any entree. The Prime Rib Restaurant and Wine Cellar are introducing 7 new appetizers: the guacamole, chorizo stuffed dates, Artigo peppercini bites, chicken and cheese nacho bites, poblano, chili queso rangoons, toasted onion battered green beans, and if you're craving Italian, Try their hand-tossed New York-style pizza made entirely from scratch and featuring an exclusive sauce seasoned to perfection with your choice of toppings. Coming to the Prime Rib Restaurant and Wine Cellar, where flavor is an experience. Their number is 682-2944, and I think we might have a winner here. News Talk 1270, you're on the air. Who do we have here?
Keith.
Keith, okay. You want the prime rib?
I would love the prime rib. Yes, sir.
Sounds good. I'm gonna put you on hold. We'll go to break, and I'll get your information off the air.
Thanks a lot, Don.
Yep. Hey, how about that? Everything worked. At least I think everything worked so far. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Have an event you'd like to promote on the show? Email Don at doncarpenter@basonsradio.com. Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And I think we're going to carry this topic over to the next hour because I really want to talk a little bit more about what could be done to help these kids out. And, I don't know exactly how much more time we'll spend on it, but I think we're going to carry it over because it's an important thing. The people that could help these kids that are at risk and end up doing things like beating up younger kids on the school bus, beating them half to death. The kids that need this help aren't getting it, and I want to talk about why. Why Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and, yes, the president have been silent about this, why they're afraid to say something about this. And it all kind of ties in with we got the call in the last break about kids are basically intimidated into not, quote unquote, snitching. And it's a culture of intimidation. And we've already talked about where this culture comes from. Now we're going to talk about what can be done and why the people that can help aren't helping. So we're going to do all of that after the top of the hour break. And let's give something else away since we have a chance. How about we'll give away a Taco John's? I want to try something out with the phones anyway. I have to apologize for Keith because apparently I forgot to change a setting, and while I was trying to get his information, the station was playing in the background. So let's do a Taco John's, 682-1270, 682-1270. This is good for a breakfast combo Taco John's, a meat and potato, that's either bacon or sausage burrito, meat and potato, either bacon or sausage taco, a scrambler burrito, breakfast and egg burrito, and I think we already have let's have a winner here. News Talk 1270 KIML. Who do we have here?
This is Doug.
Doug, okay, you want the Taco John's?
Yes, please.
It's yours. It's all yours. I'm going to put you on hold, and I'll get your information off the air.
All right, sounds good.
So, see, there you go. It's that easy to win here. I just love giving stuff away, and I'm glad the phones are working and that I can do it. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Out of town and still want to listen?
Stream the show at doncarpenterradio.com.
Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don right now, 682-1270.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter program. And welcome back to the show. And if you're just joining us, we've spent the last 2 hours, and I think we're going to probably spend at least the next half hour talking about this, because there's one more aspect that I wanted to talk about. And we're talking about this case in Pinellas County, Florida, which is outside of Tampa, where three teenagers who happen to be black attacked a 13-year-old. They were 15. Three of them attacked this 13-year-old on the bus, basically because he ratted them out for trying to sell him drugs, and they all go to a at-risk high school for kids that are at risk of dropping out. So, I mean, they're already, this kid's probably already in a rough situation anyway, and it didn't get any better. I mean, they beat him within an inch of his life. He's got a broken arm and black eyes, and basically nothing good is going to come out of this for the victim, and that's a sad thing. So the next aspect that I wanted to talk about, and we've kind of skirted around it for most of this discussion, is the fact that the people that could do something by speaking up are saying nothing. And of course, we're talking about guys like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, I guess Farrakhan. But I don't even think Farrakhan got involved in the Trayvon Martin thing too much. And of course, the president, who is the highest profile person that could say something. And, and I'm not normally in favor of the president saying something in, local affairs like this, but he certainly did in every other situation, talking about the Cambridge police acting stupidly, and Trayvon could have been could have been his son, or could have been him 30 years ago. It's just, why is there silence now? So that's what we're going to talk about here first.
A 13-year-old boy was brutally beaten by 3 older kids on a school bus while the driver looked on. The attack happened last month, but the video was just released. Take a look.
Yeah, and they're actually going to show the video. I'll kind of, they kind of pick it up where the fight's already in progress, and it's 3 kids. They surround this kid in his school bus seat. They're stomping on him, windmill punching. Just, it's terrible.
Somebody try to stop. I need help.
And the first thing the driver says is, somebody try to stop this. He's asking the other kids on the bus for help, and nobody helps.
I need help in a hurry. I gotta fight.
And then he says, I gotta fight. I need help in a hurry. I gotta fight. They're about to kill this boy. There's nothing I can do, so send somebody.
No! Leave him alone!
And then the driver gets out of his seat and says, leave that boy alone, leave him alone, leave him alone. But he doesn't go back. He just gets out of his seat and starts yelling at the kids, after he called the cops.
Leave him alone!
And again, the driver, he's 64 years old, so I don't fault him. And he looks like he's 74. He's so shook up about this that he retired 2 weeks after this happened. 18 years in a job, and these 3 thugs basically ran this guy out of his job.
Voice you heard saying leave him alone was a 64-year-old bus driver, John Moody. Now, Moody told WFLA in Tampa he didn't do anything wrong. Greg,
I don't think he did anything wrong.
That's okay.
He didn't do anything wrong by not trying to save the young boy. So listen to this.
The 3 boys just jumped on him and started pounding on him. And it did all I can. I was looking. It was like I was in shock. I was petrified. I wanted to help it so bad. I wanted to help him.
So the beating left the 13-year-old with a broken arm and 2 black eyes. And Kimberly just asked the question, why didn't he do anything?
And these kids are punching so fast, it almost looks like it's in fast motion. It's just amazing. Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML. You're on the air.
Morning, Don.
Good morning.
Hey, the reason you're not going to hear Jesse and Al pop up and say anything about this is because there's no agenda for them.
Oh yeah, exactly.
They can't, they can't advance whatever political agenda they have, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and there's no money to be made from this. There's no money to be made, and that's what they make their living off of. They make their living off hustling people over racial incidents.
It's just getting crazy. I mean, there's racism on both sides, white people and black people, and it's been that way for years and years and years.
Oh well,
but you're just never going to hear Jesse and Al jump up and say anything if it's not a cause that they can advance, and it's ridiculous. It's sad.
Yeah, it really is, and they're the ones that could help if they really wanted to, but they don't want to.
Yeah, they could steer these, I'm not trying to be racist, but they could steer a lot of young black men in the right direction if they really wanted to.
Oh, well, there's nothing racist about saying that. I think that's a very accurate statement. The people that are trying to hold these kids down are the true racists in this situation.
And and they've probably got more influence than they realize they do, but they only use it to their advantage.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they absolutely have influence. I mean, they managed to strong arm an entire county to basically prosecute an innocent man of murder.
Yeah.
And then the whole Tawana Brawley thing. I mean, that cop that was falsely accused, one of the cops, ended up taking his own life because of the false accusations. It's
and that whole case turned out to be a lie. It was a lie from the get-go.
Well, and that actually, now that I mentioned Tawana Brawley, I actually saw a story about her. She's finally having to pay, because she lost a perjury suit a couple years after this whole thing happened, and she never paid it. And she owes one of the other cop that she accused, she owes him $400,000 and got away with not paying it for 25 years. And they finally, just this past week, started garnishing her paychecks.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, she should be in prison for that. I mean, really.
Well, so should Al Sharpton, because he's the one that started that whole nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. I want to thank you for the call. The lines are backing up here, so let's take a couple more calls. Excellent points. News Talk 1270, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, it's too bad George Zimmerman wasn't driving the bus that day.
Well, he would have put an end to it real quick.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this so-called Trayvon Martin tragedy, I don't feel it was a tragedy. I feel that kid got everything that was coming to him.
Well,
I think that he needs to be made an example if he was.
And these three kids are exactly like him. I mean, it's going to be the same thing.
That's right. I don't know why people can't look beyond or can't see with the error of their ways, but it's just the society is today, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're kind of losing you there. Phone's kind of breaking up. Let's take another call. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
There's a time for speeches, and I think that time has passed when it comes to violence in schools. The problem is that nobody is willing to actually stand up and do anything about it when they have the chance, either because they're afraid of litigation or they're afraid of reprisals, like physical abuse being aimed back at them.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me at this point if say they did reinstate corporal punishment in schools. It wouldn't surprise me if some of these kids start trying to hit back.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then the parents would sue.
Yeah, the parents would sue. I believe our school district here does not believe in corporal punishment, but the Wyoming statutes do allow it. The other issue would be, when we've got violence and terrorism going on our FAA-controlled airlines, what do? We have security on every airplane, at least the big ones, okay? Why don't we do that with school buses? Kids are just as unruly, if not more so. I mean, even elementary kids get into this kind of stuff. This is not an isolated incident, and I don't really think it has much to do with racism. If the one kid ratted out the other kids for selling drugs, that's not a racist issue. That's somebody believes that drugs are bad, and he knows that somebody's selling drugs, so he tells the authorities. What he did was perfectly right. At least as much as I know about the issue, I don't believe that he was racially motivated.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
And if the three other kids decide to beat him up because he ratted them out, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, or alien, doesn't really matter. That's just human nature. You rat me out, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we are in society now. I mean, this kid's being punished for doing the right thing.
Yep, it all goes back to human nature. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And we're not teaching that in school. We're teaching, that violence is never the answer. Well, sometimes violence is the answer, and it's used the wrong way by the wrong people. Now, if it was taught control, okay, I'm talking about self-defense here. If the public school system in this nation put as much time and effort into teaching children how to stand up and be responsible, physically capable, physically active adults, and not just politically correct adults that are leeches on society for the rest of their lives, I think society would be a little bit more balanced. But in order to do that, you've got to instill right and wrong, and in order to do that, you have to have a set-in-stone line, what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah,
and they're not willing to do that.
Well, we're absolutely not willing to do that, and that's an excellent point. If you don't have, clear boundaries, kids, and it's in kids' nature to test boundaries. If you don't have clear boundaries, they're going to go over them every time.
Right, and that's to be expected. Like I said, it's in our natures. But I remember back in the old days, and I've been reading a lot of the stuff, a lot of the history, a lot of the writings of our founding fathers and things like that. Things were rotten back then. I mean, everybody likes to paint the picture that our founding fathers were, all upstanding and perfectly moral men, and that the people that fought in the war for independence were all together. And no, some of those people flaked out at the first chance they got. Some of those people, they led because it was foisted upon them to lead, and then they thought, all right, well, if I don't do this, I'm never going to be free. I'm going to be a slave or whatever. So they did it because they had to do it. And I think we're at that point now. We need to get back to that point. We need to look at the two paths we can choose right now. The one we're on ain't going anywhere good. The harder one we're going to have to choose here in the next 5, 6, 7 years, it's the only one that can lead us out of what we got going on right now.
Yeah, and our entire society is at risk at this point.
Yeah, it has been for a while, but it seems to be, as we're swirling the drain, we're getting faster and faster and faster, and we're right on the edge of going down.
Yeah, it's the momentum of the thing. It really is.
Yeah, nothing really shows that off clearer than the public school system. I mean, when people keep coming up with these examples of kids getting kicked out of school because they have an army man on a cupcake, they're suspended, or the army men on the cupcake are taken away because that promotes violence in the classroom, or somebody eats a pastry into the shape of an L or a gun, he's suspended. That just illustrates the absurdity of our system and where our political correctness has gotten us, and it's got to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. I hate to cut you off, but the lines are packed. We're going to try to get to everybody. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hey, Don, this just helps make my case for school vouchers even more.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why they're so resistant against doing it. I mean, really, what's it going to hurt other than the teachers' unions? And
that's it.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
That's the only argument against it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Vouchers, I mean, you have a school that teaches responsibility and has corporal punishment, it would go a long way. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, Larry here. Comment here. We need to get DARE and Crime Stoppers and all that garbage out of the schools. These people that are teaching you can't discipline your kids. There was an incident where a kid was jumping his bicycle and he had 2 or 3 stitches, and some busybody teacher called law enforcement because this kid was being abused, and the parent had to almost threaten to sue. And then you got 4-year-old parents calling the cops on 4-year-old kids because they can't handle them.
Yeah.
Or, and I was in Walmart the other day, and this lady was counting, and 1, 2, 3, and this little 5, 6-year-old, not very old. And I mean, this went on for 45 minutes. That kid snapped attention, 1, 2, 3, and so it's getting kind of annoying. And I pull up the checkout. Here she is, 1, 2, 3. And I turned around, lady. I said, if you teaching 4, 5, and 6, you wouldn't have to keep going over because it's obvious he knows how to count to 3.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, the thing is, we've got a bunch in here. Oh, they come in with a little bruise. Somebody's going to call the cops or, administration, and then the cops show up at your house, and boys are going to be boys. And that's part of the problem is this DARE and Crime Stoppers garbage that they've got in our schools. They're so afraid they can't even raise their voice to them. or somebody's going to get sued. And these parents don't have time to be parents because they're out coal mining and trying to run 3 or 4 jobs, and they don't have time to be parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they have time to be parents, they're not allowed to do the job anymore.
Exactly, and we need to get this mentality that you can't discipline your kids out of the school system, and get a bunch of teachers or somebody in there that's got a backbone to say, hey, you will be good in my class. But they can't do anything.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I hate to cut you short again, but the lines are still piling up. I want to try to get everybody in. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, Glenn. Hey, I got a thought on this whole deal.
Sure, what's up?
There are no more fathers left in the home, and that's the bottom line. And the schools, everything that's going on at the schools and the school bus, that's just a symptom. You know, the problem is at home. These kids don't know. You know who the most loved man in my house is? Me. You know who the most feared man in my house is? Me. And I have very well behaved kids. You take the father out of the home, it gets back to that. And that's the bottom line. These kids that are beating these other kids up and they don't know any different. They're being raised by street gangs and thugs. They don't know any different. They don't know to go get the lawnmower out and mow the neighbor's yard for $5. They know to go get some drugs and stand on the street corner and be thugs.
Exactly. And I guarantee that at least 2 of those 3 kids didn't have a father in the home, and maybe all 3.
I haven't even seen the video. I just heard about it 20 minutes ago, and just from what I'm hearing, I'm thinking, where was their dad? Where are those 3 boys' dad, and why are their hides not canned? Hell with the cops. Here comes dad.
Oh yeah,
that's the problem in society.
They're probably either in prison or hiding from child support. I mean, I hate to say it that bluntly, but that's probably exactly where they are.
That's why I laugh, because it's just, what else can you do at this point? And how do you change it? That's the whole problem here. You know, we're feeding these people, we're supporting them. They don't have to have jobs. They don't have to have responsibility. These kids don't realize that if they want that toy, that, hey, I'm willing to pay for it, but you got to learn how to pay for part of it too. This is stuff that's instilled in a family setting at a very, very young age. Very young age.
Nope.
And
absolutely.
Kids are 5 and 6 years old, Don. They don't even know. They don't even know yes, please, no, thank you. They don't walk up to a door and open the door for people anymore. It's just it's a whole different world.
Yeah, I mean, it's something foreign to me. I mean, I've never been exposed to this kind of stuff, and it just fascinates me that there's a whole part of society that just thinks that this kind of stuff is all right.
That it's the new norm, yeah. It's just not. You know, a kinder, compassionate society lasts far longer than an angry, rebellious society, you know.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean.
Have a good day.
Yep. Thanks a lot for the call, and we ran really long on that break, so let's take a short one, and Chad should be here in just a minute. We'll talk a little sports when he comes back. After sports, we'll talk more about this. So, actually, here comes Chad now. So we'll just let me rearrange things here. Okay, rearrange things in the computer, and then we'll just completely skip the 8:15 break. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. We're still talking about the bus fight.
Bullying situation.
Yeah, that was. There have been a lot of people calling in. They have a lot of good comments about it. And
what would you say are some of the more accurate synopsises of the callers' takes?
I think the general consensus is that number one, and we actually just had an excellent call about this, that these kids probably didn't have fathers in the home. So, that leads to a lot of this stuff. And I think just a general societal lack of responsibility. And also, as far as the bus driver not getting involved, he was probably afraid of being sued.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, and there are actually some places in Florida, some counties where it would have been illegal for that driver to get involved.
And he was probably thinking, "I'm just a bus driver. I'm not a babysitter or caretaker."
Yeah.
But you'd think out of a sense of the right thing to do, he might try to do something as a human being.
Yeah, I mean, and 64-year-old guy, I don't really fault him too much for it because, I mean, he probably feared for his life.
He's probably thinking, "I'm just driving this bus.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about all this other stuff."
Yeah, I mean, he was so shook up by it that he retired 2 weeks later.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, after 18 years on the job.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a shame. It really is a shame. And, we'll talk a little bit more about it after the bottom of the hour break. But what do we have coming up in sports?
In sports, we will hear from Dave Christensen, the Wyoming coach, about football, and we will recap baseball from last night.
Okay, and we're going to take a short break. I'm going to try to get Michael Turner off my fantasy team.
I would do that if I were you.
Yeah. I wish I'd paid more attention. News Talk 1270 KIML.
For the latest on the show, follow Don on Facebook. Just search for Don Carpenter Radio. News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And, if you haven't been listening for the past 2.5 hours, you've really missed a lot. It's been a really an enlightening show. And I think it's also interesting to talk about something besides the normal politics stuff as well. So I'm glad we were able to have this conversation. In the next hour, I promise we're going to get to the airport subsidy stuff. We'll get to that in the next hour. And so, if you have any comments on that, please save them for then. We're going to go right back into this, talking about the beating on the school bus in Florida. These kids beat up three 15-year-olds beating up a 13-year-old because he told authorities that they were trying to sell him drugs. And that's kind of where we left off. So let's go back to, this is audio from the 5 from, this is actually from the night before last. The first clip I played in the first couple hours of the show was from last night, and I played them out of order because I think the first one was a better discussion of why this kind of stuff happens, and now we're talking about what can be done about it. And we've had a lot of callers with a lot of great comments about what we could do. Bringing back corporal punishment at schools, encouraging fathers to stay with their families, that would be good. Not subsidizing fathers to leave. That would be a nice start. And of course, my contention is the least we could do is have some of these leaders go and speak up about something like this and say it's not acceptable. But they're not, and that's not acceptable.
3 15-year-old suspects, Kimberly, have all been charged with aggravated battery, it seems like the least that should happen. But what about the bus driver? They say he didn't have any responsibility.
You know what? That's pathetic. I would welcome the day I'm fired from my job because I jump in and save a child. It is just disgusting. There is no humanity left. Jump in, help the boy. He's getting beaten.
My first reaction was that, but then I heard the guy was 64 years old. He was scared for his life. I'm not going to be too hard on the bus driver.
My God, he could have been beaten.
Maybe we need younger, tougher bus drivers.
Beaten to death. He could have had a serious head injury. He broke his arm, black eyes. It's awful.
And those guys seemed really big.
And they're
beating
big.
up a 13-year-old. And there's a report that apparently the 13-year-old boy had told the school earlier that some of these guys were trying to sell him drugs. So he maybe told them something and then that
didn't buy it.
Trouble.
What? I'm going to disagree with Kimberly. I feel for the bus driver here. He's 64 years old.
He's a big guy.
He's an older gentleman. He's had a spotless record driving this bus. Ugh. These 15-year-olds, there's 3 of them, were raining haymakers down on this poor kid. These were not young kids. These guys were big boys. They were slugging it out. It's not like he sat there and cranked.
And again, if you have the opportunity, just look for the video. You'll find it. You can find it on all the news sites now. Watch this video. It's tough to watch, but I think everybody needs to watch it and understand exactly what was going on. This isn't just some little kids fighting. This is almost grown men beating up a young boy.
Up the radio, okay? Obviously, from the interview afterwards, he was very emotional. He said he's lost sleep over this. It's a tragedy, and I feel terrible for
I don't feel bad for him at all.
He was really scared.
I don't feel bad for him at all.
Jess, every one of these bus drivers has, among other things, most of them have axes, by the way, to break out windows in case something happens to the. He has got something he could have used.
An axe
he could have whooped.
Well, I don't know if he should be using an axe on the kids. But maybe they should start training these bus drivers with tasers. Maybe that's the answer. Give them a taser.
I would have used an axe. I would have used an axe on the little bastards in a second and let their parents come and sue me.
Well, should they
Okay. That's why I like Bob Beckel. I mean, I don't doubt that he would have.
He's a big guy. That 64-year-old guy.
That's right,
guy.
Bob.
And you could have. Those punks would not have. If he went after them, they would have stopped.
Bob,
they had some in their hand.
Bob, we need to be upset with the kids. We don't.
And you know, the kids probably would have stopped if he went after him. They probably wouldn't have attacked him. But if he did, you know, if the kids did, what if the kids beat him up and he lost his job and got sued? I mean, they've already ruined this guy's life already. He's had to retire.
We need to be upset with the bus drivers. And we need to be upset with the parents that allow these kids to wreak hell on this young boy. And all the kids on the bus that videotaped it with their iPhones and did nothing.
We're talking about the bus
Well, no, I was just going to say, this is, I agree with Bob completely.
And that's actually another interesting point. Why didn't any of the other kids on the bus help? I mean, that's the kind of society that we're living in now, where kids won't even help out. I mean, I'm sure there's some kids on the bus that were friends with this kid that got beat up. Why didn't they help as well? This is the society we live in now, where people are afraid to do the right thing. And, you know, it doesn't help that our leaders encourage us not to do the right thing.
The bus drivers should be armed, not with bats, but with guns. This is a direct consequence of a dying morality based on a breakdown of family.
Yes.
I'm willing to bet each one of those guys is from a broken home, and we now have adult males terrified of kids. This is like Florida's the orange state. It's now the clockwork orange state, where adults are terrified of children. It's Benghazi in a bus. And
that's an excellent way to put it. Why is the bus driver afraid of these kids that are on his bus?
Fear creates paralysis that allows thuggery to flourish. We have to stop being scared of young people. We have to act. You have to go out there and you have to say, I'm going to bash your head.
You want to put your kid.
And that's actually a good place to stop. That's actually a good place to stop, because when we come back, we're actually going to talk about what can be done about this. News Talk 1270 KIML.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. And welcome back to the program. Let's finish this up so we can move on to the airport subsidies in the next hour, and maybe some other stuff as well, depending on how well that goes. Let's finish up this audio from the 5. They're just talking about what we can do to prevent further beatings like this from happening in the future.
Tell you something. If that happens.
Okay, let me stop my bumper music first.
I can't believe an adult, and he's a big guy, like Bob said. If Bob was on that bus, would Bob be like, oh, I can't get him, I can't do that? You would jump in, yes or no,
yes,
Bob?
I would, but also
and how old are you, like 72
I agree
or something?
there was a lot of other people involved who could have done something, but these punks, I once had a situation in my school where my daughter was, where there was a bully. And what you said, Greg, is you bet that the family is where they came from was broken or whatever. Well, it turns out I went to visit the father of this bully, and he himself was a bully. So he and I got into it, and he ended up being a bloody bully. Now, the fact of the matter is these punks ought to be going to jail for at least 6 months, and then they ought to be at hard labor. I'll be thrown out of the school, and anybody who videotapes that thing ought to be brought on the
And they robbed him. So let me tell you something. If you
maybe a little bit more than 6 months, but and here's how the juvenile offender system works in Florida. And I actually, I lived in Florida for a little bit, so I've seen some of this in action. They have what they call youth offender camps down there, and it's like a boot camp type program for these kids. But this is from all accounts from people, I knew law enforcement down there and stuff. These camps are basically gladiator schools for these kids. They send these kids away to these youth offender camps, and they just learn how to become better fighters and better criminals. And that's not the answer.
and I did these cases at the DA's office, and the juvenile justice system can give out some serious penalties, and they should have the terms and conditions, probation for a very long period of time to supervise their behavior. They should be expelled from the school. They should be kicked off that bus, and they should provide some security for that child that was beaten.
Right, and I guarantee you 2 out of 3 become serial killers.
And the kid that got beaten was doing the right thing by saying that these kids tried to sell him drugs. And that's what happens when you snitch. You get your butt kicked like that. Someone needs to give this kid who got his butt kicked a scholarship.
Absolutely.
Sharpton needs to step up and make an example out of this.
There you go. There you go. That's what we can do. Al Sharpton can give this kid a scholarship. He can bilk some money out of somebody somewhere and give this kid a scholarship. That's the least he could do after all these years of hustling.
Where is he? This was a real crime, and it's sad.
Yeah, but you got to go back to.
And we only have about a minute left, but let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hey, Don, I was going to say, too, we need to start looking into ending the drug laws so that selling drugs doesn't look like such a good business opportunity. Then we won't have 15-year-old kids doing it.
Well, there's definitely something to be said for that argument.
No.
Yeah, I guess that's a discussion for another day, but I definitely that's something we need to discuss sometime.
Nope.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks a lot. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. The fact that these drugs are illegal is part of the reason why they're so expensive and why you can make so much money doing it. It wouldn't have helped this situation here, but overall, I mean, it's something to discuss. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a lot of your callers had good points, especially about the father deal. It's not only just having a father there, it's an active father. I remember when I was growing up that the worst thing you can say was wait until your dad gets home. You know, that shocks your day right there, because then you're spending all day thinking, about what's going to happen when dad gets home.
Oh, I remember that. Hang the belt and the doorknob and all that stuff. I mean,
That was code for dad's coming to whoop your butt.
Yep. Oh,
I think it's going to take. We can't change it overnight. I think it's going to take decades of rethinking the family structure for discipline, but also for a lot of other issues.
Oh yeah, well, it's not just discipline; it's also teaching responsibility, and we've strayed from that for the past 40 or 50 years. Okay, I think we lost you there, but I mean, an excellent point. I mean, it's going to take a long time, and hopefully we won't have to have too many more discussions like this. With that, we're going to move on in the next hour, so stay tuned. News Talk 1270, KIML, Don Carpenter Show. When we come back, we'll talk about the airport subsidies.
No crazy conspiracies.
Just good local talk. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270, KIML.